Well, hello, beautiful ones. I'm Stacey Murphy, the head vixen of the Vixen Academy. And I want to welcome you to my podcast where today I'm going to be sharing with you how I almost made this relationship mistake. And it is something that I know there are many of you that have gone through this or actually maybe presently going through it right now. And I wanted to share this with you to kind of say, as a coach, we're people too, right? We have our own stuff that's going on, and I found myself in this situation and I wanted to share it with everyone to, really get some insight and learning from this. And so, for those of you who are new to me in my community, you can find out more about what I do by going to thevixenacademy.com. All right. And so, for some of you, if it seems like I've been MIA, that is because I've been recuperating from the after effects of having to sever this particular relationship. And the relationship I'm actually talking about is the relationship I had with my virtual assistant. Now, even though this is a business relationship, one of the things that I found out that I was actually feeling some of the same anxiety, even fear, just like if it was something in a romantic relationship. And when I really started to think more deeply around the drama and the stuff going on between with my virtual assistant, I kind of I went to the point and said, wow, this is exactly what a lot of women feel when they're going through this same relationship conundrum with certain men in their lives, right? And it was one of those things where it allowed me to feel that feeling, which I haven't felt in a while. So it was really good to really get connected with that only from a perspective of having more empathy and understanding in terms of what we all go through when we're dealing with relationship challenges. And so one of the things I noticed, there were just some really striking parallels between what I was experiencing in this business relationship, just like if it was in an intimate relationship. Because one of the things is, even in an intimate relationship and a close business relationship, you put your faith and trust in your partner, right? In the person that you're with. And when they let you down, that's where the pain really comes in. So I'm sharing this because I want you to learn from my situation. And like I said before, yes, coaches are human. We're not perfect. And we deal with emotional dramas, like you and everybody else. I think one of the things that is a benefit from being a coach is, I have all the tools and the techniques. So I'm able to, see something more quickly and I'm able to address it. Right. But aside from that, we still get triggered. I still get triggered by certain things, so it still happens. And so I want you to hear, as I'm sharing with you, I like for you to ask yourself these questions as you hear, what I share and in the relationship that was going on with me and my virtual assistant. So I want you to think to yourself, have you or are you currently going through anything remotely similar in your relationships now? Have you ever felt that people are taking you or have taken you for granted or taking advantage of your kindness and your patience, right? And then you feel like you're left holding the bag. Or maybe, when a person breaks a promise, do they take responsibility for their actions? Do they make an honest effort to make amends for what they did? Or do they don't take any kind of self responsibility and it leaves you more frustrated, angry, and everything else that's going on? And so, because this is what I was dealing with in my relationship with my virtual assistant, there were broken promises, bad communication, self sabotage. And on my part, I have to admit, I had a little bit of sloppy boundaries with her. And so, have you experienced any of that, right? In a relationship with your man or past or present, where you've had dealing with broken promises, there's been bad communication on his part, your part, both parts, right? self-sabotage going on in the relationship. And then, of course, sloppy boundaries, which I also call batshit boundaries. So this is why I wanted to share this with you, because you can see in a romantic and intimate relationship, all of that also exists. And I found myself actually having to coach her on how to be a good VA. And this is a person that was referred to me by someone else, a person that was referred to me by someone that I trust. And so what happened is I started noticing patterns developing, right? And just think about in your own relationships when you start noticing patterns of how people are acting in the relationship, how they're behaving, are they consistent with what they're saying, right? So, what do you do when you actually start to see patterns in your relationship, especially those that are not favorable to you? So what I do when I see these patterns is I addressed, the pattern several times with her by using effective intimacy communication. So, for those of you that are in my tribe or been there for a while or taken any of my programs or coaching, that is a formula that I teach in every single thing that in all of my programs. And yet there were still broken promises, bad communication, and self sabotage. Right. And so what happened is I would even say to my virtual assistant, what is it that you would need from me that can help you make your job easier? So I was even putting myself out there to help her more. And here was the part where this is the self responsibility. And I want all of you, especially women who are listening to this, when your man says something or approaches you with something and asks you a question because he wants to know either what you're thinking, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. The one of the feedbacks that I get from a lot of men is the women won't say what they have to say, and they let it build and build and build, and then they get triggered by something and then they explode and go nuclear on them, right? So just like when I was asking her, what is it that I can do to make her job easier, she would say nothing. Right. So that right there is self sabotage, especially when people are actually trying to help you. Now, here's what's interesting. So I want you to take note of that, especially if you have a habit of doing that, because this is where that leads in relationships. So, what was also interesting about this is others started to come to me. When I say others, I'm talking about other coaches. Other coaches started to come to me asking me how to best work with this particular virtual assistant because she was working with all of us. It was like a group of us that she was working with because they were actually experiencing similar behavior. But I came to find out what they were experiencing was actually worse than what I was experiencing. And I was like, oh my word, seriously? And when I heard that, that's when I realized how bad things were with her and how much my coaching and communicating with her was actually working for me to get something out of her because other people weren't getting anything out of her. So think of it this way, this would be akin to other people warning you about a man who's nothing but trouble, but did you listen to him? Right. So think of it also in your current situation or even in the past where people may have warned you about a particular person. Now, this could be a romantic partner or even a friend, right? But you were warned about how a particular person was. What did you do with that information? Did you take in that information and say, okay, note to self? Or did you take in the information and then totally ignored it because you were fixated on the shiny new object that you wanted and ignored the warning signs or people trying to help you out? So, did you listen to the warning that you were given? So, I made note to self. And so, after I heard that, I made a couple of changes with her. So I did take this into consideration, and yet things were still not getting better. And stress was piling on because there was a significantly critical project that we were working on. And she knew how important this was, for the overall business. So, what happened was I finally said, this has to stop because if this were a dude, if this were a man that I was dating, he would have been gone a long time ago. So that's when I had to ask myself, right? Um, because, and also going back to that, have you ever held on to a relationship, especially with a man that you should have kicked to the curb a long time ago? And think of the extra suffering that you went through and that you experienced because you did not let that relationship go. So I had to ask myself some hard questions about why I was holding off on kicking her to the curb. Why didn't I follow through on my own boundary rule of three strikes and you're out, right? And that's something that I teach in Manifest Your Man. So women are not, they see a pattern early on in a relationship. And this is so that 5 or 10 years down the line, you're not still dealing or suffering with the same pattern. And then you go to yourself, things haven't changed, right? And so that's why I have this three strikes, you're out rule. But just like I said, when it came to my virtual assistant, I didn't employ it. And so I had to ask myself, why? Why didn't I do that? And it actually pains me to say, but I'll be very honest with you. The short answer to that is 4 letters, and it was fear. And the fear was coming from, I had doubts if I could handle this project on my own, because the thought of just the mere thought of doing this by myself, I felt like it felt like I was a deer in headlights, and it just froze me and just paralyzed me, and my stomach was in knots. So because of that, I stayed in this bad relationship, right? And two things came to mind. You remember the song "It's Cheaper to Keep Her"? I may be showing my age because that's a classic, right? So if you never heard that song, Google it and you'll hear it. But the song is called "It's Cheaper to Keep Her." And then, the other phrase that was kept coming up was, it's better to deal with the devil that you know than the one that you don't know, right? And all of that is coming from ego. All of that is ego, fear-based lack mentality talking. And I was in that when it came to her, right? And so this is why I wanted to share this with you, because I know there are many of you that can relate to this. And so, but keeping her was actually causing me to have massive stress. And think about that in your own intimate relationships. Like I said, keeping her was causing me massive stress. I even had trouble sleeping. My digestion was off as well. And I even had to pay a visit to urgent care, right? Which is one step below the emergency room and things of that nature. So, and these are just some of the toxic effects of being in a bad relationship and how it affects your overall health and well being. And this is why you really have to look at this critically and very seriously. And so, these are some of the toxic effects, like I said, it was having on me. So I had to let her go before the project was completed because I had to take a stand for myself. I had to say, enough is enough. And when I had the courage to say, I'm done with this, even before my project launched. And I said, you know what? I just have to, I can work it out. I can deal with it because my sanity and my well-being is more important than hanging on to this bad relationship and having to pull her along. So when I had the courage to let her go, this is what happened. Um, I gave her plenty of chances, coaching with her, talking with her. So when I pulled the plug, that's when she finally wanted to take responsibility for her performance after the fact, which fell on deaf ears. So is that a pattern that you've experienced in your intimate relationships? When you tell your man, I am done, I am going, then all of a sudden he wants to change a new leaf and all this other stuff, right? And this is after you've spoken to him numerous times about what's going on, right? And what happens is that is an indication of people not respecting you, people not taking you seriously, and people not caring how their behavior is affecting you. That is what that is about. And then what happens is they want to pay attention when you're gone. They should have been paying attention when you were still there. So to that, it's like talk to the hand, I'm out of here, right? And so in those situations, right? They are they want you back. So what are you teaching your partner? If you were to take them back, even after everything that's done, you've actually taught them to treat you any way they want to, because all they need to do is apologize, stroke a couple of feathers, and you'll come right back. To which, and some of you may have done this. Now, I want you to write down, how long did it take for the challenging behavior to show its ugly head, right? So some people say, oh, it only took a week. Some people say, oh, it took a month. Other people say, oh, it took 3 months, but it came back, because it usually does. Without there being any type of outside intervention to change the behavior, it will return and it will continue. So that was one thing that happened. Though the other thing is, I had to drop some of the obligations surrounding this project by asking myself, what's a need or a want to get this done? So I had to simplify things so I can reduce my stress. So that's the other thing I want you to think about right now is, are there obligations that are keeping you tethered and stuck in this relationship? And if you feel there are obligations that are, you need to re examine those obligations to see how necessary or important they are. Now, say, for example, if children are involved, right? Because children are not temporary and children are very important. You then have to think about, by maintaining a connection in this toxic relationship or in this bad relationship, how is that affecting my children? Is that a family value that you want to pass down to your children? So that would be the context that I would ask you to reflect on that situation, because if you stay in a bad relationship, that is the family value that you are teaching your kids to be in relationship. And so here's the next thing that, so my stress went way down after I did that. And then the other thing that happened is, instead of being upset that some things couldn't be done, the other coaches that were involved in this project were extremely appreciative and actually supportive instead. So that was another thing that was in the fear. I was also afraid that the other coaches involved in this project would be upset. But what I did was, I was honest with them. I didn't try to cover it up. I didn't try to make excuses, none of that BS. I was really honest with them. I said, here's the situation, everybody, and this is what I'm able and not able to do. And everybody was on board and they were really supportive because I was honest with them and things of that nature. And I did my absolute best to make sure everything else that I had to do went forward. And did I get the results I was expecting initially from the project? No, I didn't. Actually, I didn't. I didn't get the numbers, but I got some other pleasant surprises that I wasn't expecting along the way, that in the end result are going to turn out to be much bigger than what my original expectations or estimates were, right? So this also is another thing, is sometimes you can't be afraid to let go of something that isn't working, because it will be replaced by something that is better, right? So you see, don't I don't want anyone to make, my relationship mistake, right? And so if you have people in your life who are constant sources of letdown, drama, and strife, then ask yourself why you're putting up with it. And then you also have to ask yourself, what would you do differently so that you can avoid a situation like this? So one of the things I'm going to do differently, business must continue on. It's not going to stop, right? So in this current project that I'm working on, I am just hiring specific people on certain skill sets versus a virtual assistant. I'm hiring people in specific skill sets where that is their strength to do parts of my promotion. So I'm Frankensteining it together until I have time to search for another virtual assistant. But it's interesting, as I'm recording this today, earlier today, one of the coaches that was in my program, she's like, "Hey, I work with an amazing team and stuff like that." And she shared, she goes, "I've been working with them. I know their work, da 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 da." So she put me in contact with them. And guess what? The head person there for that other virtual assistant group, she has contacted me already. So what happens is, that's what I said. One goes out, someone new will come in. So it's all about not crying over spilt milk, but learning your lessons, really kind of not badgering yourself and not beating yourself up, but instead saying, okay, what lessons have I learned from this, and applying those to the future, right? So use it as a catalyst to whatever you're going through, use it as a catalyst to take your power back. Because what you're doing is you're signaling to the universe that you're ready to be treated in a way that's loving, genuine, and respectful of who you are, right? Of who you are. And when you do that, you're making room for the people that will honor you, for people that will respect you, for people that will follow through for you. And in the long run, it may turn out to be a much better situation than you had left, right? And so, this is why I want to share. Yes, it was a mistake. I saw how I dropped into fear around this relationship. And then I had to ask myself some hard questions and have, what I call a coming to Jesus moment with myself, right? And I saw where I was. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up about it, but I'm going to take some inspired action to shift this situation, and then be honest with other people that are involved in it, and look how I feel that the universe divinely supported me in this transition. So yeah, I had to, and this whole situation happened at the beginning at the beginning of this month, at the beginning of the month. And so I've been really quiet since then, because I had to take time off from business so I can like rest, recuperate, and get myself resituated and regrounded so I can come back in a much more powerful way for the exciting things that are actually coming up, in the next couple of weeks and things of that nature. So I wanted to share this coming from my heart. And what I would love for you to do, if you have to listen to this a couple of times, go ahead and do it, and take those steps that I just recommended that you do, so you can get freedom from a bad relationship, for you to get clear on where you stand, why you stand, and so that you can step into relationships and connections that are more worthy of you. All right. And so, for those of you, if you are listening to this podcast on YouTube, I invite you to hit the like button and hit subscribe so you can know when I post some more videos or podcasts that I post up there. And everyone, I take this to heart. I'm sharing from mine to yours. We're all in this growing journey together. And with that, everyone, namaste. We are complete.